Okay, my name is Izzy Duff. I live in Dundee. I'm a retired primary school head teacher, and my husband had dementia. Husband Bill had Alzheimer's, and my mum had vascular dementia. So both have passed away some time ago. Bill was my husband, is my husband still. We met in Johnshaven. He came to the school as a new primary school head teacher. I was already there as a teacher, and the rest, as they say, is history. We got married in 1978 in a snowstorm, and we were married for, I think, 38 years. Bill and I were both living in Aberdeen, and he had retired. My mum was in Dundee, and a job came up. Bill was retired, so we only needed one job. A job came up in Dundee, and I applied for it and got it, which meant we were moving back down to Dundee. So we were able to see mum every weekend and at nights, that kind of thing. So we did a lot of things together, went on holidays together and so on and so forth. As she was getting older, it was becoming more difficult for her to survive on her own in the house. So long story short, she came to live with us. And at that point, well, there was no sign of dementia that I noticed, and no question of dementia. So she lived with us for a number of years. And it was only, she tended to get infections, urine infections, that kind of thing. So it was only one time, and that was where I realised that infections do make a big difference to dementia. When she was in hospital once with a urine infection, it was a Sunday, there was nobody about, and I was fed up. So I was looking at the notes at the end of the bed, and I read vascular dementia. That came as a shock to me because I didn't know. So she must have been for a scan and so on. But it was never mentioned after that, and no support was ever offered. It just was accepted that she had dementia. And it was clear as the years went on that she did have dementia, because she could become very difficult, which was quite different to Bill. Prior to moving down to Dundee, things were strange, for want of a better word. His behaviour was slightly different. He was more anxious. He wasn't at the point of getting lost, but he wasn't as familiar with things. But I, at that point, didn't put two and two together. And it wasn't until we moved down to Dundee and we moved to our new house, and I was still working full-time as a primary head teacher, and he had retired. Bill was 21 years older than me, although he didn't look it. And when we moved down, the house everything had to be done to it. And while I was working, and I used to leave a big A4 diary out for him with things to do. And I was very aware that things were not being done, or were done differently, or he was getting annoyed at workmen being there, which really wasn't like him. So eventually, and he used to talk about having a fuzzy head, which, I wasn't really sure about that. And he was sometimes said he was dizzy. Eventually I persuaded him to go to the doctor, which he did by himself. And the doctor sent him to the memory clinic. And he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2001, October 2001. But in retrospect, my first concerns would have started in the late 90s. We were in Ninewells Hospital in Dundee, and we were in the consultant's room, the two of us, and we were in front of us was a range of people, from the consultant to, I think, students to social worker. I didn't really know who they all were. And what was said was the diagnosis was that Bill had dementia of the Alzheimer's variety. And that was it, end of story. And we both just sat there and almost went, oh, thank you. What do you say? And then it was I think it was a social worker or the mental health nurse said that she would be in touch with us, and that was it. We got in the car and drove home, and I tried to speak to him about it, didn't want to speak about it. And to be honest, he lived with dementia for 15 years. He never talked about his dementia at all. Yeah, I must admit, I would have liked to have had a post-diagnostic support worker, because my mum had Alzheimer's. She had vascular dementia, and we had no support at all for her. I wasn't even told of her diagnosis. I found that out on the notes at the end of a hospital bed. So I had no experience at all, really, of it when Bill was diagnosed. So there was nobody to signpost us to places or whatever. We went to the memory clinic, I think it was every 3 months, where Bill had to do the mini mental state exam. And to my shame, I used to try and get him to practice it and away from the house. What season is it? That kind of thing. And he would be given the mini mental state exam. I would be given a questionnaire. At the end of it, we'd be given a prescription for the next 3 months, and that was basically it. Bill did have some help from a mental health nurse, I think it was, but I was working and he didn't want to see me anyway, so I don't really know what went on there. So other than that, there was no signposts at all, until eventually we got a referral to Alzheimer's Scotland, and that opened the gate to some activities as much as anything else. At that point, Bill didn't need care. It was quite a few years into his diagnosis before he needed care. But my mum had carers, so there were 2 carers in the house who got to know Bill. And that was really helpful because, I could chat to them about Bill as well as about my mum. And it was a social worker, my care manager, who was the biggest help to me. And he's the one who suggested what was called direct payments at the time, called self-directed support now. So I would say the only other thing that helped me was the Alzheimer's Society of England and Wales, the online forum, which at that time was called Talking Point. And that was a magnificent help to me because there's thousands of members and people go on, they ask questions, people with experience answer these questions. And that was as much of help as anything else. So between that and getting the self-directed support package, these were the 2 biggest things for me. They got on well together, which was a bonus. And at that point, Bill's diagnosis was still in quite the early stages. So they got on well together. And whilst the carers were there and we had the package, they would all go out together, which was good. And in the house, he was able to make her cups of tea and things like that when she couldn't do that. She was always okay with Bill, but it was me. She would say, my name is Izzy, but of course I wasn't christened Izzy, I was christened Isabel. And my mum used to say, "Where's Isabel?" And I'd say, "I'm here." "No, you're no my Isabel." So I thought, wait a minute, okay, so I can't say that I dealt with that very well. I do understand that there are better ways of dealing with it than I did. But that was where it was useful, I suppose, for want of a better word, that Bill had a diagnosis, but his symptoms weren't showing. Because Bill, my mum used to say, "Why is he not cleaning the windows?" 2 floors up sort of thing. And she didn't understand that he had a dementia diagnosis as well. When my brother used to come regularly, every week, to take her out, my brother and my nephew, and do things with her, and they'd leave, and she said, "That's an awfully nice laddie, why is he?" And I think I understand that much more now than I did when I was going through it. I don't think I dealt with it well then, but I understand it more now. And I made a lot of photo books for my mum. So she'd sit and look through all the photo books of like when her grandchildren were young and all that kind of thing. And she would recognise them as people that she knew. In the evenings, and I chose through the self-directed care package to only have care Monday to Friday. Because I wanted to have the weekends to ourselves. And we still went away. We still went out and jaunts and drives and holidays and that kind of thing. The holidays changed, of course. The kind of holidays we could do would change. But life was kind of as normal for quite a long time. And for Bill, things only really changed, I think, after my mum died. I think it's probably coincidence, but that was the 5 years after my mum died was when his diagnosis, his symptoms were more obvious, and he obviously was getting worse. Well, one thing that strikes me particularly, he was over-friendly with everybody. I used to get quite anxious if we're in town or something, and he'd go up to a child just to speak to them, to say hello. But of course, in this climate, parents are not always very keen on people, especially a man, doing that. So that was one thing. He was friendly with he was always a friendly person, but this was over-familiar, really. Nothing drastic, just over-familiar. That was one of the worst things. And just, he didn't ever suffer from sundowning. Well, he did actually on one major occasion when we'd been on holiday in Seville. and we came home. My mum had died by then, and we came home, and had long delays and everything. And as we drove past Tesco's Riverside, Dundee, I said, I'll go in for some bits and pieces. He said, well, will you get some bacon and things for my mum and dad? I thought that was the first time he'd ever done that. And actually, when we got home, I had to lock the house and take the keys away because he was desperate. He was going home. And then I suppose this was kind of sundowning as well, because when I was working, and my mum still, she could phone the school, because my school was only 5 minutes along the road. She phoned me one day and said, Bill's just gone down the path with a suitcase. So, okay, so I was able to just leave the school, and I found him. He was making his way to the railway station to find out the times of the trains to Kirkintilloch, because that's where he was born. And I managed to get him back in because it was that kind of thing. Behaviour that was, odd, strange. Obviously, memory and everything as well went. I think Bill always recognised me as a person that was important. Like for one thing that I remember was, when as a moderator on the forum, I used to go to London, as you know, and there was one time, and I used to have respite at home because of the care package I had. So Bill had the carers staying with him overnight. And one time when I came home and went into the living room, was sitting there, he looked up at me and says, I was short of you, which I thought was really quite, obviously he recognised me, he knew he'd missed me, and I thought that was really quite important, that he still knew who I was. My mum was vascular dementia, though. She would come in and out of it because I would do the trying to go into her world sort of thing. Then she'd look at me as if I was an idiot and say, what are you speaking about? Your Uncle Bill died years ago. Take all the support that they can get, to take everything that's offered and hopefully tailor it to their own needs, so that then, and remember that it's dementia, not the person. I was really lucky because Bill was never violent, he was never aggressive. I know of people whose partners have said nasty things, and Bill was never really like that at all. My mum less so, or more so I should say. But he was more calm. But to remember that it is the illness, it's not the person. So that, and take as much support as possibly get. I think sometimes, I didn't meet this too often, but I do believe sometimes professionals can be quite dismissive, and it's hurtful because you know your loved one better than anybody else, and to believe what they say about what it's like at home. Because on the online forum, they use the description hostess mode or host mode, so that when a professional comes in, let's say an OT or someone comes in to the house, the person with dementia can suddenly answer questions, can suddenly do this, do that, and the minute they leave, they're back to what is normal, for want of a better word. So listen to the person who knows that person best. And if I was a care partner now, I think keeping a diary, I would have done it and did to a certain extent on the forum, but to keep a diary of what is concerning you. So, because when you're in front of a professional, chances are you're going to forget, what was I going to say, sort of thing. But to keep a diary of the incidents, and certainly if it's going to see a GP, try and get, and I used to do this at the memory clinic, I used to send a letter in or hand a letter in to the consultant a day or two before our appointment that said everything that I was concerned about, or everything, because most of the time I was wanting him kept on Aricept, and I was waiting for her to say, no more. So as well as the things I was concerned about, I would note the things that I was pleased about that he could still do. So yes, I would say to the professionals, the biggest thing is listen and pay attention. Well, I mentioned the forum that I was on. I joined the forum in 2003. I'm still on the forum, but I'm now a moderator. I've been a moderator on the forum for 11 years. So I work on the forum every day, doing bits and pieces. But the other thing, the major thing, of course, is our choir. Started by Mr. David Wilson-Wynne in 11 years ago. It's called Dundee's Total Recall Memories Choir, and it's the best thing I think that ever happened for Bill. He absolutely loved it. Towards the end, he was in the choir to the week before he died, and at that point, he wasn't really conversing. He wasn't saying much at all. The odd terrible would come out, but other than that, wasn't saying. But when he got into the choir, he would sing. Not always the same words as everybody else, but he would sing, or he would throw in the odd yeehaw. the person that you are the care partner for is still the same person you married or you lived with or whatever. It's the disease that has changed. I think that, and take the support that's offered, or find the support that's offered. And I know every area and every region is different, but find what support is out there and get the professionals to listen to you, because you know your person best.